everyone to the Campus Pride Spotlight series. My name is Ayla Azim, my pronouns are she and her, and I'm an intern with Campus Pride. For those who don't know, Campus Pride is a leading national nonprofit that empowers student groups and student leaders working to create equitable LGBTQ+ friendly college and university campuses. You can learn more at campuspride.org. Today I'll be interviewing Macalester College for the Campus Pride Spotlight series. This series is all about what today's colleges and universities offer today's LGBTQ+ students, our diverse gender and sexuality spectrum. We will highlight colleges and universities that are providing LGBTQ+ inclusivity on their campuses and learn more about their programs and services. I want to introduce to you all the representatives from Macalester College now. Hi, thank you so much for meeting with Campus Pride for the Spotlight series. Please introduce yourself. Please provide your name, your pronouns, and your role on campus.
Yeah, hi, hello. My name is TK Morton. My pronouns are zir, and zirs, and I am the Assistant Director of Diversity, Education, Leadership, and Inclusion within the Department of Multicultural Life at Macalester College. I'm excited to be here.
And my name is M.J. Curtis. I use they, them, and she, her pronouns. I am a junior at Macalester College, and I also work at the DML as a student staff member, and my official role is a program assistant, so I help out with queer programming and also overall programming within the Department of Multicultural Life.
Thank you all so much for your introductions. So it's wonderful to have you all here today. You have a 5 out of 5 star rating on the Campus Pride Index, and everyone can check that out at campusprideindex.org. And you've been ranked among the best of the best in terms of LGBTQ+ friendly colleges and universities. So congratulations. So to start out, tell us what are some things that are on your campus for LGBTQ+ life, and specifically, what does your campus do to help create an inclusive space?
So I think something that's really great about Macalester is that queer issues are being seen across all facets of campus. So not just within the Department of Multicultural Life. We see it in our admissions process. We see it in housing. We also see it in advocacy through various staff and faculty across campus. So something that I really like is that not only that we have a physical space called the Gender and Sexuality Research Center on campus, we also have various student groups as well that are focused on LGBTQ issues, some that are for LGBTQ+ students of color, some that are for students who are LGBTQ and also religious, as well as we have all gender housing on campus, as well as various other groups and initiatives that are currently in the works. There are more things that are happening that not only support LGBTQ students, but also staff and faculty as well.
Amazing answer. Does anyone else have anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, I echo everything TK was saying. I think that as a student, it was really awesome to come to campus and see people who I could feel represented by, and come to events that were queer focused, where I could explore my identity. And I think that there's really a community at Macalester, of inclusion overall within the student body. And like TK said, you can see that supported in a lot of different facets of student life. So, yeah.
Amazing. Really good answers. So what example can you both share that signifies the importance of having a space on campus for LGBTQ+ students?
I think for me as a Black trans person and as a staff member that works on campus, having a space for LGBTQ students, not only just to survive, but to thrive is honestly vital for queer and trans college students. I know for me, I grew up in like the early like 2010s, knowing that a lot of LGBT centers were still up and coming. And so we at Macalester are really trying to make sure that LGBTQ students are not only seen and heard, but can actually see change happening while they're there, and really trying to push the envelope of what that means. That means really supporting students through not only their identity process, but also to support students that they might not necessarily share experiences with, especially for queer trans students of color who might not feel supported on campus, really wanting to not only understand, but also to push that narrative to be able to honestly, dismantle like white supremacy and what that means in the queer community, and be able to support folks in that process, as well as recognizing the achievements that we have made and wanting to do more to achieve more.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that having physical space to gather as a community is so vital, and having like the Center for Gender and Sexuality Resource Center that we have on campus, which unfortunately we've been unable to use this year because of COVID. But normally having that space that's just a comfortable place for queer folks to chill and hang out with each other and grow in community is really amazing. And that space is generally open to students, or it has been, who want to use that space to hang out, as well as being used for events. That and I think that having a specific space for first year students, which is the gender inclusive floor of the dorms, I think is also a really excellent thing that Macalester has. And I think it's important to have that space to especially, I think, coming in as a first year student and needing to find that community is so important, and I'm really thankful that Macalester has that.
Really good answers. I really liked what TK said regarding that students not only survive but thrive at Macalester, which is really important. So tell me more about how do students feel on campus about any LGBTQ plus inclusive policies?
So to give you context, I have only worked at Macalester for 6 months. And so for me, I am really trying to see what efforts not only have happened, but are continually to happen. So some of the main things that that is being done in the sense of policies, that we're trying to figure out better ways to hold our faculty accountable in the sense of supporting queer and trans, specifically trans students on campus, and making sure that those students are in the classroom or being able to feel supported, and also being able to feel safe in the classroom. And so we're really trying to make efforts to support trans and gender non-conforming students through their academic career, as well as making sure that students are also at the table, being able to see and to be able to contribute and having their voice heard of what they want to see and what rings true from them, and how myself and other staff and faculty on campus can make sure that policies that are in place will make sure that they're able to thrive and feel supported on campus. We do have lovely in our non-discrimination policy on campus that we do include gender identity, sexual orientation, and gender expression. And we also make sure that rings true in every facet of our work, to make sure that folks know that they can be supported. And if there are any policies that they want to see happen, that we take those seriously, and we make sure that they are part of the process to make sure that they know that it's getting done and that there's transparency in that process.
Yeah, so going off of what TK said, I think that as a student who's been at Macalester for 3 years, and speaking with other queer and trans students, some of the biggest policies that are important for us are, yeah, specifically trans inclusive policies. This includes always introducing ourselves with pronouns. This is something that is highly, highly encouraged during orientation, and should be incorporated into all classroom spaces. Yeah, and then I think that another big issue for trans students is having all gender bathrooms, which is something that Macalester has been striving to have in all buildings. There are not all gender bathrooms in all buildings, but there are in many of them. And from what I understand, it is one of Macalester's priorities to, when renovating all new buildings, that they have all gender bathrooms in them. And I think that the newest all gender bathroom that they put in was in the athletic center, which is an all gender locker room. And that was a huge push for us, like I think probably 4 years ago, 4 or 5 years ago, something like that. So now there is a space where trans athletes can feel comfortable having an all gender locker room there. So that's just an example of policies that are important for students, that I think that TK kind of hit the nail on the head with saying that it's something that Macalester really strives towards. That's not 100%, but is something that that they are working towards always improving and always holding people accountable who might not always be following through with those policies.
Really good answers. I really like there's a lot of student involvement with important decisions, and all gender bathrooms. Those are really important things. Yeah. So, in both of your personal opinions, why do you feel it's so important to have spaces for LGBTQ plus students at Macalester?
I know for me it's important to see not only yourself represented, but also see that reflected in the places that you are. Like, this is just not like, it's not just about representation, it's way more than that. Like, being able to see that if I like go to like an advisor and like I like tell folks that I'm trans, like knowing that that person's going to respect me and to really support my decisions, and of me either coming out or me telling them or me not even disclosing, because some folks on campus don't want to disclose their identities, and they should always deserve to have a space where they feel safe to not have to disclose and to just move through their life just like as them. And I think really being on a campus where you can just be yourself and not have any sort of expectations around it, that's one of the reasons why I work at Macalester, is that I'm able to just be myself. Like, even in the comfort of my home in a virtual context, I still know that I'm being supported not only by my team, but also by campus and also by students. And I want that to be reflected the same for students.
Really good answer. Does anyone have anything else they want to add?
No, I think that TK put that perfectly.
Excellent. So how do students get involved on your campus, and how do LGBTQ plus students obviously get involved on your campus? And do you have active out LGBTQ plus student leaders across campus?
Yes, we do. So in a non-COVID context, we actually have an orientation event at the beginning of the year called Lavender Connections, which is our LGBTQ focused event. This year we held it virtually, and if I'm remembering correctly, we had over 50 first year students attend from across not only the country but the world. We had several international students that came, which made me very happy. And so we have a mailing list that students can fill out, as well as there are several LGBTQ student organizations on campus, as well as we also have something called identity collectives, which are identity-based discussion groups. And so we have three that are focused on LGBTQ plus students. We have a asexual slash identity collective. We have a trans and gender nonconforming identity collective, as well as a queer and trans people of color identity collective. So that way, if students are like, yeah, like I want to be able to discover my identity, but not necessarily in like a traditional like student org, they're able to be in these like discussion spaces with folks that have similar identities to them, to be able to have deep conversations and to be able to build community, as well as I believe we have roughly about three different queer and trans focused student organizations on campus as well.
Yeah, the queer and trans student organizations that come to mind that I know of are Queer Union, which is kind of more like a fun, chill space. They've had movie nights. They've had I think they've had some facilitated dialogue too, but they've had game nights, things like that. I know that my first year they did a showing of Janelle Monáe's Emotion picture. That was pretty cool. And then there's also a group that is for queer people of faith, or a queer faith organization. Yeah, and they yeah, so that is a group that's focused on specifically queer people who hold some sort of faith affiliation, which I think is also a really awesome thing, because I think that having religion or spirituality and having a queer identity are not things that often are seen together, represented. And so I think that having that is also pretty important. And then of course we also have the Gender and Sexuality Resource Center, which is part of the DML, which is where TK and I both work. And we have tea times regularly where we have facilitated dialogue about queer issues, and also have like a lot of identity exploration about that. And then we have, you know, certain events throughout the year. So I think that there are not just there's not just one community for queer students, but there are actually a lot of sub communities for students with specific identities and with specific interests. And I think that that's really awesome, because there's multiple ways to get involved on campus as a queer student.
Really good answer. Really good answers. So if a student has an issue of harassment inside or outside the classroom, how will it get remedied?
So we do have a bias team on campus. So if students come with any concerns or any issues that are happening in or outside of the classroom, they can either go to our Title IX office and be able to make a report there, as well as they can come and talk to me specifically if like they have any issues, if they like don't know how to report and what that process looks like. I try to be a really great resource if there are things happening, making sure that students know how to report, what that looks like, what the ramifications might be. I know from my experience of having to deal with crisis, students get very concerned about telling people what is happening, and they think that they might get penalized for it. But the main thing is that they're safe and they are being supported through this process, and making sure that the college knows about the issue and how to best support them through that process.
Again, really good answer. Does anyone else have anything they'd like to add? All right. So how is Macalester supporting students across their diverse intersections of identity?
That's a good question. So one of our values at Macalester is actually a multiculturalism and internationalism. And so we are actually a very big international college. So we get a lot of international students who come in, and also we get a good contingency of domestic students from across the country as well. But that's actually something that we're trying to strive on, is so especially where we're located in St. Paul, Minnesota, we are not that far away from the incidents that happened in June with the murder of George Floyd. And so there actually has been a lot of work on campus to create better initiatives for BIPOC students as well as students with intersecting identities. And so that's something that not only our office, but various departments across our campuses are doing. So an example I can give is our football team actually reached out to me and had a conversation around gender and sexuality. For someone who doesn't work a lot with athletic departments, this was something huge for me to see, because this was student driven. And so I was able to give a talk about gender and sexuality to 60 football players and their assistant coaches and head coaches respectively, and really seeing that students really want to strive to make the college better. And so they really hold us accountable as staff and as upper administrators of what they want to see. And we are trying to make sure that they know that they are not only heard, but we are making things happen and trying to make sure that we change the culture of Macalester for the better to be able to support students with intersecting identities, as well as supporting the most marginalized folks, which are especially specifically Black domestic students, as well as Indigenous students, specifically Dakota people, which is the land that we are on in St. Paul, Minnesota.
Yeah, the Department of Multicultural Life, this is one huge focus, and that's the reason why the department exists. Like TK mentioned, is that out of the four main values of Macalester, multiculturalism is part of that. And with multiculturalism comes intersectionality, of course. And one project that I've gotten to work pretty closely on is a mandatory first year training called Power, Oppression, and Privilege. And the whole point of that program is to teach about how all of the different parts of our identity shape who we are, shape how we go about the world, and shape how other people see us. And it shapes how we affect other people intentionally or unintentionally. And so that's been a really cool thing to see, like having those presentations given to first years, because it's something that people don't always think about the intersections of their identity, particularly people with areas of privilege, as part of their identity, and thinking about whiteness as an identity, as well as ability and socioeconomic status, and familial background and religion, and all of these things are what make us who we are, and also they shape how we move about the world. So I think that talking about that really openly and having that a mandatory program is really vital to how Macalester students are shaped, because it teaches us about how our actions affect others and how nuanced identity can be. So I think that is a really important thing for students, and also another way that Macalester promotes intersectionality in some of its programming.
Really good answers. So social justice, equality, and equity are constant journeys of progress. So what's on your campus to improve for the next 2 to 3 years?
Oh my God, where do I start? So I think something that we're really trying to do is we're actually trying to make strides to really take the concerns of our students seriously. So we've had a lot of conversations and discussions about mental health and how we can support students in mental health. That means hiring new staff. That means potentially different initiatives, et cetera, et cetera. But I think a big thing is that we're really trying to change the culture at Macalester, and really making it a place where students can really see themselves thriving in and know that they will be supported in various ways, as well as making sure that whoever comes into Macalester knows that they're being supported, and that being clear. A big thing that I know that we're going to do is be able to be more transparent with students, and be able to take them and making sure that they understand why things are happening, how this process is happening, as well as making sure that us as the Department of Multicultural Life, we're striving to do more and do better, and being able to support students along their journeys. Again, I've been here for 6 months, so I'm excited to see what's going to happen in the next 2 to 3 years while I will be here.
Yeah, TK mentioned briefly mental health, and I really want to touch on that because this is something that coming to Macalester was really striking to me, is how involved the Health and Wellness Center is with students and with student life, and how heavily they push the importance of taking care of your mental health. And as someone who's sought out free counseling services from Macalester, I can say that it's awesome, the representation that they have with their counselors, because they have multiple queer counselors and multiple counselors of color. And I believe that they just appointed one counselor at the Health and Wellness Center to be entirely devoted to finding equity for students of color and how to improve their overall health and wellness. So this is something that I think that, like TK's mentioned before, like you can see reflected through multiple departments on campus. But yeah, I think that mental health and finding equity in the healthcare system is something that there are great resources for, and it's something that Macalester knows that they can improve on more and will be striving towards in the next few years as well.
Really good answers again. So what is the most queer or LGBTQ plus aspect or thing on your campus?
Okay, I just want to say that I think that there are just so many queer kids at Macalester. I mean, this is something that again was really striking to me when I came, is that there's just so many queer students at Macalester. I think that it draws people. Macalester draws people in who care about identity exploration, who care about social justice in general. And I think that automatically queer folks are drawn into that because of our experiences, because of systematic oppression towards queer people, and because of our resiliency. And I think that that's something that's really cool about Macalester, and it's probably in part because of the programs that Macalester has instituted as well. But like I said earlier, I think it's really interesting to see how there's not just one queer community at Macalester, but there's rather a lot of different ones. I mean, there's certain sports teams or intramural sports teams that are super accepting and just really queer. include a lot of queer and trans like spaces for athletes, which is awesome and not something that you always see in athletic settings. So yeah, I think that there's kind of a place for everyone within the queer community at Macalester, and that's kind of what makes it great.
I also agree. It's the people. I like, when I was like applying here, I was like, I know Macalester is queer. There's something here, and I'm trying to find it. And I also know that they're like, for me being like a new staff member on this campus, like I've met a lot of queer faculty and staff. Again, like some folks that like are out and they want to be, and other folks that are like, yeah, like this is a part of my life, but that's okay. Like we don't need to like talk about it all the time. And so I know for me, that's been really great to see, not only from a student perspective, but as staff, of like, yeah, like we're here, we exist, and we've been here for a while. So I always love that, like just in general, like the campus is just like full of queer folks. And like I know, especially for me being also like a Black like queer person on campus, finding other folks of color who also are queer and trans has been very important to me. That's why I love the queer and trans people of color identity collective so much. Like seeing like all of these beautiful Black, brown, and Indigenous queer trans students like living their best lives, smiling, having a joyous time makes me super happy. So yeah.
Really good answer. I love the variety of communities, of queer communities at Macalester, really. So how would you describe your campus in 3 words to a prospective LGBTQ plus student?
Three words. That's tough. I think that I would say that Macalester is inclusive, um, because it does have all of these spaces for people. And more importantly, I think that Macalester is always striving to improve. So, yeah, that's one important aspect is inclusivity. Um, can you think of 2 other words, TK? I'm struggling.
I got you. Inclusive, we'll say inclusive, activist driven. So a lot of history at Macalester is because of activism that has happened. And so I think really recognizing the history that Macalester has. So a lot of spaces on campus were created because of student activism. For example, we have an entire house called the Culture House, which was back in the day specifically made for students of color. So that house was like formerly named the Culture House in the 90s, if I'm remembering correctly. I believe it's the 90s. But there used to be a Black house, a house for Indigenous folks, a house for Latinx folks, a house for Asian folks. And so student activists came together and made that one house. And so historically that has been like a placeholder on campus for keeping that rich history. And so that's what I think that I would say to Macalester students is inclusive, activist driven, because we wouldn't have a lot of things that we would have on campus if it wasn't for the amazing BIPOC alum, the queer and trans alum that we have that made those spaces exist into reality.
Yeah, I want to echo that 100%. Macalester, that's probably one of the most important aspects of Macalester students is that most of us are huge activists. I mean, and I think that that's supported by the administration too. Dr. Suzanne Rivera, our president, put out a statement because of recent events that if anyone is arrested during a protest, she will personally pay the bail money for that. So I think that that's just a great example of how Macalester students are supported. And I think it's important to recognize too that, Macalester was not founded on the same exact principles that we have today. I mean, it was founded by a white man and it was Presbyterian. I mean, it still is Presbyterian, but it was really heavily religious. And slowly over time, it's the people that have come here that have been improving it. And so I think that that's really important that you touched on that. And I think the other word I would add, so inclusive, activist driven, and connected. I think that I think that the community at Macalester is one that's really close. I think that a lot of people can agree on a lot of values that they have here, and I think that that's a good thing in many ways. I mean, even throughout COVID, Macalester students have found other ways. There's now something called a Mac Twitter that's just Macalester students talking about things and communicating in new ways and being innovative and finding new ways to connect with each other throughout everything and finding communities. Even when they're not seeing themselves represented, they fight to find representation for themselves.
Really good answers. It's been such a joy interviewing you both. Please share for those watching on your website to learn more about LGBTQ plus life on your campus. Again, thank you. Campus Pride appreciates your hard work and your continued efforts to create an inclusive space for LGBTQ plus students to learn, live, grow, and most importantly, to thrive at Macalester College. So again, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much.
So thank you for watching the Campus Pride Spotlight series. If you wish to learn more about this campus or any other college or university, you can search for free at the Campus Pride Index at campusprideindex.org. That's campusprideindex.org for over 400 plus colleges and universities that have come out as LGBTQ plus friendly. Again, my name is Ayla, and thank you so much for watching.